Hi everybody, welcome to Friday, the end of the week, wind down time. It's we're getting ready for the weekend. I hope everybody's had a lovely week. If you're working from home, if you're doing school from home, hope it's going okay for you. If you still have to go out and about, I hope you're keeping safe and well. Yes, I've lost count, but morale in Camp Jeffers still remains high. We are keeping well and keeping ourselves entertained. Today was fort building, a lot of heavy fort building. There'll be more of that probably later. Today's story is actually not one story, but many stories. So this might be a slightly longer session. We're going to see how this goes. It is a collection of short stories called Once Upon an Alphabet. And I think I'm going to do what I did the last couple of times, which is flip the camera around and show you the book rather than you looking at me reading the book, because, you want to see the pictures, not me reading the book. And we're going to do that. So this book, I think when people ask me, like, when was this book made? How did I get the idea? The idea came around really from looking back through old sketchbooks and realizing that there was a lot of little ideas that were there that weren't quite big enough to fill a full book. A full picture book normally is around 32 pages or 40 pages. And some of these ideas I had would only have covered 6 or 7 or 8 pages. And so I was thinking to myself, this would make for a nice collection of short stories. And I was talking to my publisher, HarperCollins in London at the time, about doing an alphabet book. And I thought, wait a minute, maybe rather than just doing an alphabet book with, A is for apple, B is for ball, maybe I could do a short story for each letter. And so I went back and looked to see what ones I had. And I did. I had a bunch that sort of fit neatly into some of those letters. And then it was like this really fun job of just going and figuring out what all the other letters were. I would chat it over with some of my friends. I met my friend Mac for a couple of beers one night. We're like, what kind of things could we do for each letter? And he had some great ideas, and I had some great ideas, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And so then, over the course of time, some of those stories got changed, some got rewritten. But I'm going to go through some questions afterwards. For now, this is Once Upon an Alphabet. I'm going to flip the camera around so that we can see the book properly. And I've realized that it's actually a really, really hard book to photograph because of that neon red color. It just doesn't really show up on screen at all. So this is called Once Upon an Alphabet. And as you can see here is the whole alphabet. Now, whenever I first proposed this book idea, all of the co-edition publishers out there that have published my books, all of the other storybooks, were like, really? An alphabet book? How are we going to deal with that? Because, of course, the alphabet is different in every single language. But some of them got really creative and found ways to do it, which is absolutely fantastic. So Once Upon an Alphabet. And this book is dedicated to Dad. And it's my brother Rory who helped me design this book, because he helps me design all my books. We decided we would double dedicate this to him to thank him for never making us get a real job. Now, there's lots of people out there who want to go off and do dancing or sculpture or art or whatever it might be. And sometimes there's a lot of pressure from schools and from parents to, do something that's proper. And luckily for us, we were never really made to do anything we didn't want to do. And my dad recognized that my mum and dad recognized that we both could do this and could make a living out of it. And they supported us brilliantly. So here we go. And we start off with what looks like an argument in place, Bernard and Bob, but we'll get to them later. So if words make up stories and letters make up words, then stories are made of letters. In this menagerie, we have stories made of words made for all the letters. Did you all get that? Did you all understand that completely? I barely did as I was writing it, but I think it makes sense. So A, an astronaut. Edmund was an astronaut. For ages, he'd been training to go on an adventure up into space to meet some aliens. Although there was a problem. Space was about 328,416 feet above him. That is an accurate number, I think you'll find. And Edmund had a fear of heights. Anything over 3 feet in the air was a bit much for him. He had a long way to go. Another 328,413 feet to be accurate. B. Burning a bridge. So we can see two houses here on either side of a big ravine that are connected by a bridge. Bernard and Bob lived on either side of a bridge and for years had been battling each other for reasons neither could remember. That one's Bernard and that one's Bob. One day, Bob decided to fix things so Bernard couldn't bother him anymore by burning the bridge between them. That seems like a good idea. And Bob learned an important lesson that day. He needed the bridge to get back. This book was in no way, or this story for B was in no way inspired by growing up in Northern Ireland at all. No way whatsoever. I don't know what you're talking about. We will move on. C. Cup in the cupboard. There's tea in me. The cup lived in the cupboard. It was dark and cold in there when the door was closed. He dreamed of living over by the window where he'd have a clear view. One afternoon, he decided to go for it. Unfortunately, he forgot that the counter was a long way down and made of concrete. Oh, poor Cup. Well, let's see if that's the end of his story. D. Danger Delilah. Danger Delilah is a daredevil who laughs in the face of death. Although, as Death points out, no one likes being laughed at, you know. She dances at the door of disaster. That's where disaster lives, in case you didn't know it. Nothing is too dangerous, not even juggling daggers or jumping a donkey through a firing hoop. And she fears no one. Hold on, let's see what we got here. So, don't try this at home, which is that. Don't try that at home, kids. And good luck trying this at home if you can find a donkey. Yeah, I'll stand by that advice. Except for her dad. Oh, what was the last line? Nothing is too dangerous and she fears no one except her dad when she's late for dinner. Delilah, if you're not home in 5 minutes, there'll be no dessert. E. An enigma. How many elephants can you fit inside an envelope? Well, how many have we got here? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and the first one's about to get in. And that looks like a lumpy envelope, so I'm not sure how many's in there. And it looks like we need to turn to the letter N to find out. Okay, so we'll wait till we get to N, and we'll find the answer to that enigma. F is for forever. We got a frog, a fly, and a gentleman called Ferdinand. Ferdinand was out walking his frog, as you do, when he came upon a hole. A really big hole. In fact, it was the world's biggest hole, and it went on forever. He dropped a penny in to see how long it would take before it hit the bottom. Would you believe me if I told you it's still falling? That's because forever never ends. And it looks like that fly had the last laugh. G. Guarding things. Who goes there? Leopold Picard is a really great guard. He'll guard anything he's given, provided he's asked nicely enough, because, you know, good manners are very important, you know. So it looks like he's currently guarding a glacier. None shall pass without asking nicely, of course, because good manners are very important. His current assignment is a bit boring. A glacier would be a bit boring, I suppose, but he doesn't mind. It's much better than his last one. That gorilla definitely had the upper hand there. H is for half a house. Helen lived in half a house. The other half had fallen into the sea during a hurricane a year and a half ago. Being lazy and not owning a hammer, she hadn't quite got around to fixing it yet, which was fine until the horrible day she rolled out the wrong side of bed. This story actually came from I got the idea. There is a castle on the north coast of Northern Ireland called Dunluce Castle, and half of it blew in, or the cliff fell off during a storm hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and half of it fell into the ocean and took a lot of the kitchen staff with it. And the other half still stands there today. You'll probably recognise it if you Google a picture of it, Dunluce Castle, because it's been the set for many films and so on. But yeah, that's all the way up there. And my granny always used to tell us that our family had built that castle way, way, way back when. And one day we went up, I was bringing some people up for a tour, and the National Trust had put up a new sign saying that it was built by the McQuillan tribe. And her maiden name was McQuillan, so maybe she wasn't wrong. But apparently they lost it in a gamble about 20 years before it actually fell into the sea. So I'm not sure if that's a happy story or a sad story or what it is. I is for the inventor. There once lived an ingenious inventor who invented many ingenious things. His latest invention allowed him to observe iguanas in their natural habitat. There's the iguanas. There's another one. Looks like that's how he's observing them, from an iceberg. Incognito, which means in disguise. Although, I don't know how incognito an iceberg is in a tropical island. And these two iguanas, is that an iceberg? The other one says, I've no idea. J, jelly door. You can do all sorts of things with jelly. You can eat it, you can throw it, you can make stuff out of it, and that's what Jemima did. She made her front door out of jelly. That way, if she ever left home without her keys, she could just reach in and grab them. That seems like a good idea. Of course, so could anyone else, including this dog. Because of that, the jelly door never did catch on. But sure, who would be so foolish as to forget their keys in the first place? Perhaps the King of France, who went out for a dance and forgot to bring along keys. Don't forget, except he forgot. He got locked out and sat about all night with no sleep and no cheese. Poor king. L is for the lumberjack's light. Jack Stack the lumberjack has been struck by lightning 111 times in his life so far. What lousy luck, you might think. Well, the first few times were annoying, but he is actually beginning to like it now. For one thing, he is so live with electricity that he no longer needs a plug for his light at night. He can just hold the light bulb and read his book. M, made of matter. Mary is made of matter. So was her mother, and her mother's moose. In fact, matter makes up everything, from magnets and maps to mountains and mattresses. Mary discovered this all the marvellous day she got sucked through a microscope and became the size of a molecule. And then there's a little asterisk there. It says, although matter makes up all things, matter itself is made of molecules. And these are molecules. So mountains are made of those molecules, mattresses of those ones. That's a moose molecule, and a magnet molecule looks like that. It's a minor miracle that they all made it back out of the microscope at their normal size again. They all look a little traumatized, apart from Mary, who seems to have quite a good time. Oh, right, N, nearly 9,000. The answer to the enigma is nearly 9,000. Sort of. Do you remember the enigma? How many elephants fit inside an envelope? Well, you could never actually fit an elephant inside an envelope, but you could fit nearly 9,000 envelopes inside an elephant, as this nun is counting all the envelopes inside this elephant. And there are nearly 9,000 of them here. I lost count at around 8,572. But then again, it depends on the size of the envelope, so never say never. And that envelope was big enough to knock over this nun on her blackboard. O for onward. Out on the ocean, there is an owl who rides on the back of an octopus. They search for problems. Let's see, they've got all sorts of problems that they're solving. This one is a mathematical problem, so the owl is carrying the two. Says the octopus. They solve them. What problem is this one solving? Perhaps he's trying to find the penguin from Lost and Found the boy. He went that way. More glue. Oh, wait a minute. That's our friend the Cup from Cup in the Cupboard. And he's getting glued back together. Hooray! Like this. I think that might be the same owl that is helping out the boy from Up and Down when the boy asks, how is it that birds can fly? And there it is. Let's see, they've found something. It looks like cucumber. I think that might make more sense a little later on. So they solve them and they move on. A cry for help. Let's go. Nice to know that there's a helpful owl and octopus out there in the ocean helping people. P. A puzzled parsnip. Parsnips aren't known for their intelligence, but this one was particularly daft. He's having a conversation with another parsnip. Are we carrots? No. Potatoes? No. What are we? Parsnips. Oh! Hey, did you know that we're parsnips? And then this peanut is saying, you're not very smart, are you? Point proven. Okay, the missing question. We got a detective here lifting up the page. This story is supposed to be about a question, but I can't find it anywhere. Do you know where it is? And I've always asked kids when I went out on book tour with this book, could they solve this? And most kids, and not a lot of adults, most kids figured out that the missing question, the question that's supposed to be in the story, is this one. There's a question mark at the end of it. And kids mostly got that straight away. I was very proud of them all. R. Robots don't like rain clouds. Robots don't like rain clouds, so they steal them from the sky. From everywhere and anywhere. That's why it's been so dry. I'm sure you have been wondering, what's with all this dust? Well, robots don't like getting well. They don't do well with rust. S is for sink or swim. This is the story of a regular cucumber who watched a program about sea cucumbers and thought that might be a better life for him. That very evening, the regular cucumber went to shore and, taking a last look around, plunged to the sea. However, never having tried before, he hadn't realised he couldn't swim and sank straight to the bottom. He has not been heard from since. Oh, that poor cucumber. But don't worry, the owl and the octopus are on their way. And I think that might have been the cucumber that they were saving in their story. T, the terrible typewriter. Not so long ago, and in a room not so far away, sat a typewriter and a terrified typist. You see, whatever was written on this particular typewriter, however strange, had a terrible habit of coming true. And this story he is writing is The Tree-Eating Monster. And it says it all began, and there suddenly looking at him is the tree-eating monster. It was only a few moments before this type of story came to a tragic end. Because he had changed his story to say, it turns out the monster has a taste for typists rather than trees. Well, he shouldn't have ended the story that way. U, underground. Unfortunately, Nigel wasn't very good at climbing. The other monkeys laughed at him because he needed a ladder to get up the tree. This upset Nigel, so he used his ladder to move underground. But it turns out that being underground isn't so bad sometimes. Well, look, there's Jack Stack off into the forest. Maybe this is one of the times that he gets struck by lightning. And I think possibly this is the same storm that blew the Ariel off of the roof of Helen's house. V, Victor the Vanquished. Victor was used to being victorious, but recently he was defeated and retreated into hiding under the stairs, where he now sits, plotting his vengeance. One day, they'll all be very sorry. I don't know about you, but anytime I watch a scary film, it's always the threat of danger or something scary that gets me rather than actually showing it. So the look in Victor's eyes right here, I think is about the scariest thing I've ever done. Who knows what he's contemplating. The Wiraf. The ingenious inventor had a favourite invention of all, the Wiraf. It had the head of a whisk and the body of a giraffe. They became great friends over the years and enjoyed strawberries and whipped cream. The giraffe, of course, whipped the cream. Makes sense. X, the case of the missing X-ray spectacles. One terrible morning, Xavier woke to discover that his excellent pair of X-ray spectacles had been stolen. He knew exactly who to call. Hello, Owl? Wait, is that the burglar there that he can see in the reflection? Or he hasn't even noticed him. And that's where they came from, the smashed box. What the Owl and the Octopus knew that the burglar did not was that an extra pair of X-ray spectacles existed. So the Owl simply puts them on and sees right through the burglar in more ways than one. There they are. Who, me? Why? A Yeti, a yak, and a yo-yo. The yellow yo-yo. A Yeti up north bought a yo-yo of sorts from a yak only yesterday. I love the yellow one. Yes, it's a bargain at that price. But here's the thing. It didn't have string, so this morning he threw it away. A yo-yo without string isn't going to do very well. And on to our last letter, which is for Zeppelin. Edmund the astronaut. I remember Edmund. He's made some progress. He purchased a Zeppelin and now drives a steady 4 feet from the ground, which I think is a foot higher than he was used to. Only 328,412 to go. Hi, Edmund. I think that's the inspector from Q. And there we have Edmund. Good luck, Edmund, says the Martian on the moon. And that is the end of the alphabet story. And here we have everybody from the astronaut, Bernard, we've got the cup, we've got Delilah, we've got the elephant from Anne, we've got the frog from Forever Never Ends, but it looks like the coin did actually end up hitting something. We've got the guard, we've got Helen, who seems to be a ghost at this point, and says, I hate heights. And then the inventor saying, interesting. We've got Jemima and her yellow door. We've got the King of France finally united with his keys, and Jack Stack, the lumberjack, and his light bulb. There is the Moose and Mary from Matter, the Nun from the Nearly 9,000, the Owl and the Octopus, and the Penguin. There we have the Parsnip saying, hi, people. And then our inspector from Q with a question mark above his head. We've got the robot looking nervously at a rain cloud, the sea cucumber, the monster from the terrible tree-eating monster with a monkey on his head from under, and Victor with his violin looking up at the giraffe and the inventor. We have our Yeti, and lastly, what's that? Oh, it's the Zeppelin. So Edmund must be making even more progress. There we go. That is the end. And if you look at the back cover, that is the alphabet, and the words for story have been picked out. There we go. So I'm going to turn this around again and turn on some comments and questions so that we can go through some of those. And I'll probably going to take a few minutes because that was quite a long story session today. Some people sent in some questions earlier. Does Bob ever get back after he burns the bridge in B? He does. It just involved a lot of rock climbing, and he would not make that mistake again. And actually, Bernard helped him out, so they became friendlier. Orson9 wants to know, how can robots catch clouds? Well, with their big extractor arms and robot cloud catching machines, simply enough. Let's see, what else have we got? Are there really nearly 9,000 envelopes inside the elephant? Somewhere around there. I did my best to try and count them as I was putting them in, but I did lose count. So we're just going to say nearly 9,000. If anybody wants to count them and tell me how many there actually are, please let me know. Why did the paperback version of this book have a different name? And that's a great question, actually, because there is a paperback version. I think it's only available in the UK and Australia, though correct me if I'm wrong. And it's called An Alphabet of Stories because there's fewer pages in it. So for each of these stories, as you see for Danger Delilah, there is a title page, then one spread, and a conclusion. So each one is a 4-page story with a cover that you can begin the part of the story on, then the presentation of a problem, and then the solution of the problem. So you get a beginning, a middle, and an end. But in the paperback version, we decided to make the book slightly smaller so it could be priced a little cheaper. And we got rid of the title pages, and we sort of condensed all of the art to just fit in 2 pages rather than 4. So that's why it's got a slightly different name, because it's a slightly different book. Let me see. With people saying they would love more stories about the Owl and the Octopus, there probably is a lot of potential there. I should look into that. A lot of people just saying nice things about the book. Let me see if we get any actual questions. Which alphabet stories were already in my mind when I started? I think so when I said I came up with this idea, there was a bunch of half-cooked stories in my sketchbook. One of them was the Wiraf. One was the X-ray spectacles. One of them was Edmund the astronaut. The Cup in the Cupboard was another one. And then a lot of them had different versions of things, like D, instead of Danger Delilah, was originally going to be Dear Dear, where it was about a small boy and a deer had a pen pal relationship and they would send each other letters. But that was slightly too long and frankly not interesting enough to make it into 4 pages or even slightly longer. So I went back and I wrote this book over the course of about a year. And I would read all of the stories and then sometimes, having not looked at it for a while, I would read through and be like, oh yeah, that one definitely is not up to mustard. I gotta change that one. And so a lot of them were rewritten over the time. So somebody from Australia is asking, Switchfoot C, do the owl and the octopus rescue the cucumber in time? They do. You'll be pleased to know no sea cucumbers were hurt or harmed in any way during the making of this book. There was no normal cucumbers harmed in the making of this book either. Apart from, well, no, I don't even like cucumbers in sandwiches. So cucumber harm-free, this book. Let's see. Lots of other comments coming in, trying to pick out the questions. So, oh yeah, we can go to the questions that are coming in right now as well. Have I personally seen the house that fell into the ocean? Yes, I've been many times, except it wasn't a house, it was a castle. It's a much bigger castle than a house. And it's on the cliffs on the north coast of Antrim, one of the most beautiful places, I think, in the entire planet. And if you Google Dunluce Castle, you'll be able to see pictures of that. So let's see. What did the burglar take? The burglar took the X-ray spectacles that were Xavier's, and you can see them in his bag. Let's see. How did I get the idea for stay-at-home story time? Oh, that's a good question. Who's asking that? That's Mama Aspira. How did I get the idea to do this? Well, we were on our way back to Northern Ireland. I don't know if anybody remembers, but my wife and I and our 2 children were halfway through a year of traveling around the world. And we were in Japan, and then we made it to the west coast of the United States. And we could sense that things were changing for the worse, and we wanted to get back home to be closer to my dad. And so we moved pretty quickly, and we were just thinking about, okay, well, we're going to have to go back home and to the apartment that we have in Belfast, and what are we going to do all day? And I was wondering, well, what are all parents of kids going to do all day? And I just thought, why don't I read out some of my stories? I don't do that very much, and that's what gave me the idea. So I'm glad that you guys all are enjoying it and tuning in. So a couple of people having issues with watching properly. If you go to my website after, at any point, you can see all of the previous ones. If you go to my website and click on books and scroll down slightly, the first icon you see is the reading books, the stay-at-home story time icon, and you can watch every single book that we've done so far. And normally about an hour or a couple of hours after we do these, then they go up onto the website. Let's see. How did I make the turning page on the first page of Q? Oh yeah, that's a fun one. There's a couple of places where I use photography in this book. So the first place is E for envelope. So if you can see that. So there's like a little, turn this off. So if you can see, there's the envelope there. That's a photograph of an envelope that I put in and drew around. Printed it out on a piece of paper and drew around it. That's another photograph of an envelope stuffed with some things to give you a little head fake, making you think that there were some elephants in there. And then the other place where there's photography is Q. And all I did for this was I worked out, well, what page is going to be behind Q? So imagine you got this book and you actually... imagine you actually lifted the page up. What would it look like? So if I lifted this page up, it would look like that. There's a white page underneath. So I just did that and photographed it and then changed this corner of the piece of art to do that. And exactly the same with this one. I thought, well, what would happen if somebody was coming down like this? I did have to cheat this one slightly and use a bigger piece of paper because this paper is too thick to make it bend like this. But I just set an orange piece of paper behind a slightly larger piece of paper the same color, crumpled it up a little bit, took a photograph of it, and then tried to blend it into what looked like a pretty clean white page. That was fun. That was probably technically the trickiest thing to do in this whole book. Somebody's asking, why does O, a very eagle-eyed observer, says, why does the story for O have more pages than any other story? So as I said, all stories each have 4 pages. Each letter has 4 pages, apart from O, which has an extra 2 pages. And the reason for that is because of the way that books are made, what they do is they take a piece of paper, they print it, they fold it in half, and they fold it in half again. And that gives you 4 pieces of paper. And so every book that's printed, the number of pages in it is a multiple of 4. So you could divide that number by 4. And when we did that for this book, after every single page, and the title page and the copyright page, we had 2 extra pages that needed filled. And I thought, well, what if I was to give any story in this book an extra 2 pages, which would it be? And the Owl and the Octopus problem-solving partnership seemed like the most obvious one that could use a few extra pages. So that is why. Right, now let's see. We'll go back. We'll do 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to sign off for the week. Somebody's asking, what are my 2 favorite colors? Actually, this color, the neon red or the Pantone 8105U for uncoded, is probably one of my favorite colors. That, and at the minute, light pink, still from last week. The week before it was probably mint blue. So do I like salsa? I do like salsa. Thank you. That comes from that was a question coming from Apache Gal. Let's see. I love the punchline's nature of this story. What made you turn the page punchline setup? What made me think of that? And that's from Matt Stewart. Well, that's one of the most powerful things that books can do, is you have the power to change the story with a turn of the page. Now, unlike a film where the director controls absolutely the speed of everything, like what you see and when, with a book, the viewer is in control. And you as the creator have a little bit of control, like you can, by having a lot of empty space on a double page spread, you can get people to sort of slow down a little bit. And if you turn the page and you could see the middle of the story, like the middle of what the setup of the problem is, but then you could also see what the solution was on the same page, it wouldn't be as satisfying as having to physically do something to get that reveal. It's like opening a box with a present inside. So that was the one thing that I knew was going to work for all these stories, was that the punchline or the conclusion of the story would be on a page turn. All right, guys. So I think I'm going to say good night for now. As ever, I hope you're all being safe and being well. I know in the UK that the weather this weekend is going to be beautiful. Please don't be tempted to go outside and play in the park or play in the streets or whatever it is that you would normally do on beautiful days. We still need to stay inside. We still need to be safe and keep all of those people who would be more vulnerable to this virus than others. We need to keep them safe and keep our doctors and nurses and medical workers safe. So please stay inside, everybody. Wash your hands whenever you get a chance, and just be generally nice. We're all going to come out of this much better the other end. I am sure of it. Okay, I love you. Good night, and until Monday.